Hello everyone, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. It is Sunday afternoon today, and since I seem to be on a bit of a roll this week on some interesting quotes and lessons about the book The Foundations of Mindfulness by Eric Harris, great little book, I thought I'd continue. And actually, we started by defining mindfulness in the first video, and then after that we went on to explaining the two aspects that are to be practiced during meditation and for enhancing our mindfulness, and which was focus. So we talked about focus, and the other element being vigilant or environmental awareness, if you will, and those two being the yin and the yang aspect of meditation as a practice, and both of which are necessary to cultivate your mindfulness and the mastery of your mind, as opposed to just living in the moment or just being aware or only being able to focus, right? So because those are two kind of opposing aspects, you want to keep them in balance, and you want to exercise them both in order for your mind to become generally stronger and more balanced. So we spoke about what is mindfulness, and then we spoke about how to achieve and sustain focus. And today I'm going to touch on the other aspect, which is this, what we call the monitoring aspect of meditation. So once again, if I quote then Eric Harris, he says, paying attention consists of two mutually supporting skills. Excuse me. We call them focusing and monitoring. We focus on the object of meditation while monitoring the peripheral activity. Excuse me. And so what he's saying here is you need to do both. Okay? And we described last time, if you only choose to focus, that is sort of narrowing the pinhole of how you use your mind, and you can do that, but chances are, as you do that, something will creep in from left field without you noticing, and next thing you know, your mind is wandering, and you've lost focus because you weren't good at the monitoring side of things. So monitoring is very important. And once again, talking about that yin and yang aspect of those two qualities. So focusing is what he would call selective attention, which involves making, he says, a conscious choice to focus for longer and more deeply than usual. And this is what he calls approach behavior. So again, this is yang, right? This requires effort, is purposeful, it's driven, and all those aspects of yang. And then you have monitoring attention, and that is yin. So he calls it withdrawal behavior. It is vigilant and dismissive. So he describes this as noticing but not processing, or elaborating on the peripheral data that is coming through. And he says it is a space maker. It aims to keep the mental stage uncluttered for the chosen task of focusing, right? So in other words, it's almost like you have two guards performing the task. One is sort of going out there and sort of poking invaders actively, and the other one is almost keeping watch in a tower, and he's scouting the horizon for any troops that might be coming in at the same time, so to speak, right? So and again, right, so how do you do that? And I'll share the way I try to do it, and whatever has worked for me, which is getting better with time, let's say. And so you make of it what you will. You can also try your own and see what works. This is a constant experimentation with yourself, with your inner self, and see what's working and what's not. So one of the things that I realize works very well is keeping to the posture of meditation, which in another book that I might comment on later is described as keeping a dignified pose, as if you were about to recite a poem or break waves with your chest. Now, that's not to say to go like this, but it is just to say that you have a certain dignified approach, and so your spine is long and the front of your abdomen is relaxed, and this is communicating to your mind that you are there, right? You're not absent. I've noticed that the moment my posture collapses, my mind seems to also collapse in and into itself, and then you start daydreaming and you're back here somewhere or whatever. Whereas if I maintain the pose, it's as if I'm communicating to my mind, hey, we're here, we're right here and now. That's where the here and now part comes in. That's where the modern definition of mindfulness comes in, which is being in the present moment. And the way you are in the present moment is, on the one hand, keeping your posture. Secondly, the other thing that I do is I try not to shut my senses down. As you progress in meditation, you get to what are called in yogic language the jhanas. Those are levels of abstraction in the mind, and by that it means that your senses begin to shut off and you are truly in your mind. I have had experiences of that, especially through pranayama, through certain through certain breathing techniques that put me in that state of mind. But I have by now just about enough practice so that when I become introspective to that level and I'm abstracted to that level, nothing comes in from left field to distract me. So it's pure awareness and emptiness, and I can focus on whatever I want. When I'm in those abstractions, I usually drop in a few deep suggestions in my mind that I want to develop. But if you're lacking that, especially if you're a beginner, if you go into that level of single focus and let your senses completely disappear, chances are your mind is going to start wandering because you have no anchor to keep it in the present moment. And the best anchor to stay in the present moment is bodily sensations. The sensation of the breath is one such sensation, but that is going to be your object of meditation. So it's a narrow pinhole through which you are watching that. But you can extend that to say, okay, you're going to focus, for example, 80% or 40% or whatever it is on your object of meditation. And the rest of your awareness is going to be making sure that you are aware of your body, constantly correcting your posture, constantly making sure that you are relaxed, constantly making sure that your spine is elongated, constantly making sure that your chin is tucked in. And that alone, making those little corrections as you go along, making sure that you're not too much to the front and hanging and making your back work, or the other way around. That monitoring alone of grounding yourself in the body, that is an anchor that keeps you in the now. Other anchors that I used to stay in the now is, it used to be that when I close my eyes, which is probably a good way to start with meditation, then I would start, these mental images would start to come in from the back and start to create little stories, and off I went into mind wandering. What I do nowadays, or I try to do, is I try to activate my visual cortex, or try to make that sort of reddish, purplish, blackish visual field that you see when you close your eyes. Try to actually see it. So as opposed to my eyes are closed and now my mind is somewhere else, it's no, my eyes are closed, but they are active. I'm actually actively looking. I'm not looking for anything because there's nothing to see, and I'm not making stories about what I see, but I am seeing, which means that I'm there. Your vision is a very powerful sense. It takes up a huge part of your mind. So if you're actively using your vision, there is a chance that it'll keep you there. It'll keep you engaged. The other one is my hearing, but I try not to listen to sounds. I actually try to listen to emptiness. If you've never tried that, it's a little bit of a strange thing to say. It's like, so how do you listen to emptiness if it's not there? And well, it's the lack of sound, right? So there's always sound and not sound, if you will. And if you try to find the not sound, you will notice it's always there. And I try to combine those things. I try to use whatever I can to keep me grounded and present. So I'm never somewhere else. I'm always there, so to speak. One of the other things that I try to do is I try to be mentally sort of inhabiting this space right here. I've noticed that whenever I'm present or whenever I bring myself to this sort of space here in front of my face, in my face, in front of my face, somewhere here, whenever I'm mentally here, I'm not somewhere else. And so I try to keep myself present right there, so to speak. And so between all these things, I anchor myself in the moment. Now, what is the mental attitude that you want to have when you're present in the moment, so that your monitoring awareness is keeping other thoughts correctly monitored and dealt with? In other words, you're not using this to suppress thought. You have to be very careful with that. We're not trying to stop thought here. We're simply trying to manage the spotlight of our focus to where we want it to be, because it'll shift and things will come in place of your object of meditation. So your object of meditation is, say, the breath on your nose, and you're focusing on that, but at the same time you are present through the techniques that I showed, and you are sort of observing. You're kind of watching what's going on elsewhere in your body, any thoughts arising. Eckhart Tolle has one very funny technique to do that, which is he asks a question, which is, he says, I wonder what next thought is going to come into my mind right now. And then he kind of watches that and he waits for it to come in. And just that act of watching already kind of makes the thought not come in. And if it does, then you can observe it and you can label it, as we mentioned in the last video, to say, for example, savings account or a trip to a holiday trip. And then you deal with it by labeling it, which creates distance, and then you go back to your object of meditation. But see, unless you have that monitoring awareness of being here with your senses aware and you sort of focusing, but at the same time present, right? If you don't have that presence when you're focusing, that focus is going to shift elsewhere. And then you're going to find yourself having to bring yourself back, having lost yourself in thought for a while. Nothing wrong with that. It's going to happen thousands of times. And so what we said is you celebrate realizing that you got lost in thought. But if you have strong monitoring awareness, and you deal your awareness between the object of focus and keeping always a watch, then the chances that you'll be shifting away are smaller. And you're going to notice that keeping strong monitoring awareness is as difficult as keeping and sustaining your point of focus. So these are skills that need to be trained and cultivated. And it's very rewarding when you find yourself having a meditation session of, say that you start with 10 minutes. It's very rewarding when you realize that more or less 5 out of those 10 minutes were spent with a very good deal of focus and being very present and watching. It takes energy to do that. It takes a lot of energy because our minds are essentially conditioned and used to just going all over the place, and you're lost and you come back again. And so you want to practice that a lot. Just practice being very present and focused. And so with that, that's the advice that I can offer about monitoring awareness or monitoring attention. It is a crucial skill in order to learn how to meditate correctly. It's not just about hard focus and willpower, because that's not gonna it's not gonna cut it. It's a scarce resource. So if you cultivate that monitoring awareness and you're simply very very present, when things are, where little nuances or thoughts or images and things to distract you start to come in, you're immediately on top and you go like, I seem to be thinking about this thing. You give it a label, you come back to your object of meditation, and then you just keep doing that. You keep doing it and doing it. Eventually your mind will wander, and then once it wanders, the task is to, once you notice, to celebrate that noticing, bring it back to the object of meditation. So that is when it comes to the two aspects of meditation, focus and monitoring. In the following videos of the review from the book, The Foundations of Mindfulness by Eric Harrison, we are going to go into the actual foundations of mindfulness according to the Buddha. And we're going to mention what those are, and we're going to explain all of them. There are 4 foundations of mindfulness that should be practiced during meditation and at all times of the day every day, right? So we're gonna go into that a bit, because people seem to think that if they meditate for 10 minutes a day and then just go about their lives in any in the usual way, that there's going to be real progress. But if you want real progress to happen, you want the state, the meditative state, to become a trait in your life, and to have it start to seep in, and have its positive effects during the rest of your day. So I hope that is interesting and helpful content, and I'll be coming back with more content pretty soon. This was Meditation Amsterdam, and I'll see you guys later. Cheers.